Hello there, my sleepy fellows. Tonight, let me guide you into a quiet corner of the magical world where the winds are soft, the trees listen kindly, and time itself seems to hum in gentle, enchanted breaths. This is a story nestled between forgotten pages, an adventure not written in the usual books of spells or famous tales. It is about something hidden deep beneath the earth, beneath the roots of the forbidden forest, where an ancient vault slumbers, patiently keeping a mystery that has not stirred for centuries. But don't worry, this isn't a tale of danger or fear. No monsters to chase us, no dark wizards lurking in the shadows. This is a soft, winding journey of curiosity, of magic that waits patiently, of friends exploring the quiet echoes of Hogwarts and discovering that even the forgotten corners of the world hold stories that long to be remembered. And if you enjoy stories like this, where wonder unfolds slowly, like pages turning in a breeze, then you're always welcome here. You can gently press the like button, or subscribe, or even explore more tales whenever your heart feels like wandering again. But for now, just rest, listen, and let your imagination walk with mine for a little while. Our story begins not in the depths of a forbidden place, but somewhere far more familiar, in a quiet corridor of Hogwarts, just past the moving staircases and the sleepy suits of armor. The air smells faintly of parchment and polished wood, and golden torchlight flickers gently on the old stone walls. A cat's soft paw steps echo distantly, likely Mrs. Norris on her slow evening rounds. All around, the castle is settling into its nighttime hush. The hour is late enough that most students are tucked into warm beds, their curtains drawn, their wands resting quietly on bedside tables. The common rooms are dim and cozy, embers glowing in the fireplaces. Even the paintings seem to speak in softer tones at this time of night, their brushstroke faces yawning and curling deeper into their frames. Yet not everyone is asleep. Down a narrow side hall near the divination tower, a small group of students lingers, drawn together by something unspoken. A feeling, a question, something left behind, maybe, or perhaps something quietly calling to be found. And though they do not know it yet, their footsteps will take them beyond the edges of the known castle, past creaking floorboards and old wooden doors, into the forest's breath and the earth's memory, toward the forgotten vaults that wait beneath. So take a deep breath now. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts float gently, like feathers on the wind, and follow softly as the story begins. At the heart of this quiet tale, under the drifting candlelight of Hogwarts, are three familiar figures, friends whose names you already know, and whose bond has carried them through storms and laughter alike. Harry Potter, with his messy hair still just as untamable as ever, stood quietly near the window of the Gryffindor common room. The firelight cast a gentle glow on his round glasses, and in this moment, he looked less like the boy who lived, and more like any other thoughtful young wizard, tired from the day's lessons, but still wide awake, stirred by something he couldn't quite name. His fingers idly traced the spine of a book unopened in his lap, and his gaze drifted toward the edge of the forbidden forest, now wrapped in shadows. Nearby, Hermione Granger sat curled on the armchair, one leg tucked beneath her, a woolen blanket half slipped from her lap. A copy of Hogwarts, a history, rested open beside her, although it had clearly been forgotten for several pages now. She was still in her school robes, her hair a bit wild after a long day, and her eyes sparkled not with sleep, but with quiet curiosity, the kind that never really let her rest until it had found answers. She noticed everything, and tonight, even in the peaceful stillness of the castle, her senses were quietly alert. Then there was Ron Weasley, stretched out on the rug, with a cushion pulled under his head, staring lazily at the ceiling as the enchanted candles above flickered gently. His wand rolled slowly between his fingers. He wasn't saying much, but he didn't have to. His presence added something warm and grounding to the space, as if the room itself sighed in contentment when he was near. A sleepy smile played at the edge of his lips, though whether it was from a dream forming or a joke still lingering from earlier, no one could be sure. They weren't meant to be awake at this hour. None of them were. And yet, here they were, all three drawn into the same hush, the same strange feeling that something, just something, was waiting beyond the window, beyond the firelight. A kind of quiet tug, like the whisper of wind on parchment or the memory of a forgotten path. They didn't speak much, they didn't need to. In this moment, they were simply together. Outside the tower walls, the castle sighed, old and kind. A staircase turned itself in sleep. A tapestry fluttered ever so faintly. Somewhere, an owl hooted once, then fell silent again. And just beneath all of this, beneath the calm, beneath the stone, something unseen shifted. The forest waited, and so did the vaults. But for now, in the softest breath of Hogwarts night, three friends rested on the edge of discovery, together, as always. It began, as many magical things do, not with a bang, but with a whisper. That evening, a low mist had crept in from the forest, veiling the grounds in a silvery sheen. The moon hung low over Hogwarts, pale and watchful, casting long, sleepy shadows across the castle walls. Most students had already gone to bed, their dreams gently cradled by the warmth of the old castle and the rhythm of familiar enchantments. But not Harry, Hermione, and Ron. They lingered in the common room, the fire burning low now, crackling softly in protest against the coolness gathering in the air. It was Ron who noticed it first, a soft, rhythmic hum, almost like a purr, coming from somewhere nearby. "Do you hear that?" he mumbled, lifting his head from the cushion. Hermione tilted her head, listening. At first, there was only the normal hush of the castle at rest, but then there it was again, faint and musical, like a lullaby played on strings made of starlight. "It's coming from the hallway," Harry whispered. They exchanged glances, the kind that friends share when something strange stirs the air and curiosity outweighs caution. Without a word, they rose, each one wrapping a cloak tighter around themselves. Hermione grabbed her wand, just in case, though it remained quietly at her side, and they stepped out into the corridor. The stone walls of Hogwarts were cool to the touch, and the portraits they passed were fast asleep, their inhabitants tucked into their painted beds or gently rocking in hammocks, unaware of the night's unfolding. They followed the sound. Down the corridor, past the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy and his ballet of trolls, the music grew slightly louder, not urgent, not alarming, but strange in its sweetness. It didn't feel threatening. It felt old, very old, and somehow deeply sad. It led them to a corridor they seldom used, near the entrance to the staircase that led to the dungeons. A tapestry there fluttered faintly, even though there was no draft, and the wall beside it shimmered ever so slightly in the moonlight. Hermione stepped forward, her brow furrowed. She reached out with one hand and brushed it across the stone, and the stone moved. Not a door, not a passage, but something shifted beneath her fingers, like a breath exhaled after centuries of silence. A faint golden outline appeared, tracing the edge of what had looked like solid wall. The three of them leaned in, barely daring to breathe. The wall melted away. Beyond it was a narrow passageway, curved and winding, leading downward, beneath the castle, into the earth. No words were spoken, only the soft sound of their footsteps echoed as they moved slowly into the corridor, lit by a gentle glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, pale blue and gold, like moonlight frozen in time. "I've read about this," Hermione whispered. "Hogwarts has passageways that even the Marauder's map doesn't show. Some say they were sealed off hundreds of years ago." "But why now?" Harry murmured. "Why did it open?" The corridor responded with silence, deep and knowing. Down they went, deeper and deeper, the air growing cooler and thicker, with the scent of ancient stone, moss, and a whisper of pine, echoes of the forbidden forest above. And then they reached it. A circular chamber, hidden beneath the school, veiled in shadows and ancient charm. At its center stood a pedestal carved from obsidian and marked with strange spiraling runes. Around the room, there were carvings, scenes of Hogwarts long before any of them were born. There were the four founders, though they looked slightly different, younger perhaps, or rendered in a style not taught in any book. Between them, etched in fine silver thread, was the forest, the forbidden forest, and beneath it, vaults. Hermione knelt beside the pedestal, brushing away dust. "These aren't just decorative," she said softly. "They're a map." "A map to what?" Ron asked, his voice low and awed. "To something underneath the forest," Harry said. "Vaults. Buried." Hidden, the pedestal began to hum, very softly, as though responding to their presence. It pulsed with warmth. A delicate circle of light rose from its surface, hovering just above it, spinning gently, casting flickering shadows on the chamber walls. Hermione reached out slowly. "It's a memory sphere," she breathed. "But this one is ancient." She let her fingers hover above the sphere. Images began to appear within it. A soft swirl of color, then shapes. A young witch with long silver hair walking through the forest, her wand glowing faintly. She approached a stone door, half buried in ivy. The door bore the same rune that now glowed on the pedestal in front of them. The vision faded. Ron let out a slow breath. So, that wasn't just decoration. No, Hermione said. This place is showing us something. It wants us to know. Know what? Harry asked gently. Hermione stood slowly, her eyes wide but not afraid. That there's something beneath the forest, something that was sealed away, maybe forgotten, or meant to be forgotten, Ron added, with a glance at the quiet hum of the chamber. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in the glow, the steady warmth of the pedestal, grounding them even as questions began to rise. The vaults beneath the forest were real. The passage had chosen to open, and now, it seemed the story was calling them. Yet nothing in this discovery felt rushed or ominous. There was no fear in the air, only wonder, a slow, unfolding mystery, wrapped in the stillness of night and the silence of forgotten enchantments. The passage waited behind them, ready to lead them back to the castle if they chose. But something told them this was only the beginning. The forest above swayed gently, its leaves whispering lullabies in the night, and below it all, the vaults slept on. Waiting, back in the warm halls of Hogwarts, the morning sun filtered softly through the windows of the great hall, casting long golden beams across the breakfast tables. The smell of toasted bread and pumpkin juice drifted in the air, grounding everything once more in the comfort of daily routine. To anyone passing by, Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked like three ordinary students finishing their eggs and buttered scones. But beneath the casual conversation, their minds were still with the memory sphere and the whispering passage deep below. The question wasn't whether to go back, it was when. By the time evening cloaked the castle in its familiar hush, the decision had made itself. The three friends met again outside the tapestry, wands tucked into sleeves, lanterns gently glowing in hand. This time, the passage opened even more easily than before, responding to them as though it had been expecting them. "I think it knows we're ready," Hermione murmured as they stepped inside. The soft glow welcomed them, leading them once again through the coiled corridor. But this time, instead of stopping in the circular chamber, the path branched off. A new corridor had appeared, invisible before, now visible only because the pedestal had awakened the magic that slumbered within. This new path was different. The air grew slightly warmer, and there was the faint smell of blooming moss and candle wax, an odd mixture that seemed somehow enchanted. As they moved deeper, they noticed the walls changing. The stone began to give way to something older, smoother, crystalline in places, with tiny specks that sparkled like stardust in the lantern's glow. They came upon a small chamber nestled like a pearl between the corridors. It held a single object, a mirror. Not the mirror of Erised. No, this one was smaller, round like a pocket watch, mounted on a bronze pedestal. Its frame was carved with vines and roots, all intertwining and blooming outward, as though they had grown rather than been forged. Hermione stepped forward. "It's enchanted," she whispered, squinting. Harry tilted his head. The surface wasn't reflecting them exactly. Instead, it shimmered faintly, as though it were looking elsewhere, or elsewhen. And then, as softly as breath fogging up a window pane, the mirror's surface began to show movement. They saw themselves, but not as they were now. They were younger, much younger, first-year versions of themselves, wandering through the forest, laughing, ducking branches, pointing at magical creatures in the distance. The younger Hermione carried a heavy book. Ron had twigs in his hair, and Harry's face was lit with the wonder of discovery. "It's us," Ron whispered, stepping closer. "But we never did that, did we?" Hermione's voice was thoughtful. "No, I don't think this ever happened. At least, not in our time." The mirror flickered again. Now it showed 4 students, strangers, not from their time at all. A girl with long braids and dark robes, a boy with green-rimmed spectacles, another student with moonstone earrings, and one with a silver cloak, his hand resting on the very same mirror. They were deep in the forest, standing in front of a vault door embedded in a tree trunk. It was unmistakable. The same runes glowed across the surface, the same twisting ivy design that marked the pedestal below Hogwarts. Hermione's eyes widened. "Those are the Founder's apprentices." "You're sure?" Ron asked, blinking. "I read about them, briefly, in Hogwarts, a history. Each Founder had a student chosen to continue their legacy, but they disappeared centuries ago." The mirror shimmered again, faster this time, almost as if it were breathing. The forest in the image grew darker, stormier. The apprentices entered the vault, and then, just before the vision faded, they looked back at the mirror and smiled, not a warning, a welcome. Then the mirror went still. Harry reached out and gently touched its surface. The mirror rippled like water, and with a sound like distant wind through leaves, the chamber shifted, the walls melted away. Suddenly, the trio stood in a new space, vast and circular, carved entirely out of glowing white stone. The ceiling arched high above, like the inside of a great dome. Runes spun slowly in the air, suspended like soft fireflies, forming words in ancient tongues. At the center of the room was a spiral staircase, downward. "Are we still under Hogwarts?" Ron asked quietly. "No," Hermione said, her voice filled with awe. "We're under the forest now." Harry looked upward. Though no sky was visible, they all felt it. The presence of trees, of roots wrapping deep into the earth, of something natural and magical resting just above them. The mirror had transported them, not through space alone, but time, not back or forward, but sideways, into a hidden seam of the forest's memory. They descended the staircase together. Each step was soft, muffled by moss, as though nature itself was cushioning their journey. The walls shimmered with soft vines that glowed faintly. The temperature grew warmer, almost like a greenhouse, except more ancient, more still. At the bottom of the stairway stood the vault. It was enormous. Its door was made of pale stone veined with gold, and at its center was a symbol that pulsed faintly, a tree with 4 roots, each marked with the insignia of one of the Hogwarts houses. Beneath it, carved in elvish-like script, were the words, "Where memory grows, truth awakens." Hermione stepped forward and brushed her hand along the trunk carved in the stone. It pulsed softly. "I think it's tied to each of us," she whispered. Harry touched the root bearing the Gryffindor crest. Ron placed his hand on the next. Together, the vault responded. A gentle hum began to build, not loud or vibrating, but melodic, like a lullaby sung by the forest itself. Lights emerged from the carvings, twining together in a soft dance. Then, with a sigh like the turning of a great page, the door slid inward. The vault was not filled with gold, nor weapons, nor dark secrets. It was a garden, lush and green, blooming in every direction. Strange magical plants glowed softly in hues of blue and violet, and in the center of it all was a tree, tall, silver-barked, with leaves that shimmered like glass under moonlight. Around its roots were stones, 7 of them, each engraved with the initials of a different magical being. Not all were human. Hermione crouched near one of the stones. These are memory stones. The apprentices. They left something here. A part of themselves. Ron looked around slowly. It's not a vault. It's a resting place for memories, for magic. Harry stepped forward and gently placed his hand on the tree. Instantly, his mind filled with soft whispers, not words, but feelings. Comfort, curiosity, wonder, 1,000 moments of discovery shared by those who had come before. The vault was not forgotten. It had been waiting to share, waiting to be opened by those who still carried wonder in their hearts. When they finally turned to leave, the door closed softly behind them. The mirror reappeared at the base of the stairway, waiting to take them home. And as they stepped through, back into the quiet corridors of Hogwarts, the castle felt somehow different. Not changed, but deeper. As if they now understood something it had always tried to say, that some magic lives not in spells or incantations, but in memory, in quiet places, waiting patiently for the right heart to listen. After some time, whether minutes or hours, they couldn't tell, the trees began to thin, and then it appeared. Not a grove at first, but a space between time. There was no gate, no archway, just a shift in light, as if stepping from one memory to another. The forest fell away behind them, and suddenly they stood in a circular clearing, bathed in moonlight, though no moon was visible above. The air was still and sacred. In the center stood a single tree, smaller than the one in the vault, but familiar. Its trunk was wrapped in ivy that shimmered faintly with silvery runes. Beneath its branches sat 4 low stone benches, carved with the symbols of each Hogwarts house. And surrounding them were figures, not alive, not ghosts, not paintings, but echoes. Memories, each sat peacefully on the grass, glowing faintly, transparent but warm. They whispered to one another softly, their words forming ripples in the air, like a breeze moving through tall grass. The trio stood in awe, not daring to speak too loudly. Hermione stepped closer to one of the memory figures, a woman with short silver hair and deep amber eyes, dressed in robes embroidered with tiny stars. "She's thinking," Hermione whispered, "not speaking. But I can feel her thoughts." Harry reached out toward another echo, a boy with a satchel full of scrolls and a smile that flickered with curiosity. "He's remembering something, a spell." A moment in class, Ron looked around slowly. "They're students, like us." "They were," Hermione said. "These must be the Founder's apprentices." Each figure shimmered softly, interacting not with the trio, but with each other. They weren't aware of their observers. These weren't sentient spirits. They were preserved memories, held here by the grove, guarded by the tree. As they sat quietly on the stone benches, watching the soft, eternal conversations of those long past, a calm fell over them. Here, nothing rushed, nothing demanded. The very air encouraged stillness, as if reminding them that discovery could be quiet. That understanding did not always arrive in lightning bolts, but in echoes and gentleness. After some time, Hermione gently brushed her hand across the stone beneath her seat. Her fingers caught on something, a rune, carved so finely it could be mistaken for a crack. As she traced it, the ivy on the tree above shimmered brighter. A voice, not spoken but known, whispered in their minds, "Those who remember may plant. Those who listen may grow." The ivy began to move, unraveling like a ribbon from the trunk. It wound down slowly, draping itself across the grass in front of them. At its end bloomed a single silvery flower, soft, small, and humming with quiet magic. Hermione leaned in, eyes wide. "It's a memory bloom. They're legendary, said to contain the essence of one truth, one lesson, held by the one who planted it." Harry touched the flower gently. A pulse of warmth traveled up his arm, not like fire, but like a memory of sunlight on a cold day. For a moment, he saw a scene, faint, like a dream just before waking. A young apprentice standing before the founders, holding a book filled with blank pages. "I don't know what to write," the apprentice whispered. Rowena Ravenclaw smiled. "Then start with what you remember." The vision faded. Harry looked at the others. "It's teaching us." Ron picked up the bloom carefully, and it dissolved into light in his hand, absorbing into him, not lost, but joined, a lesson now lived in him. They sat for a long while, watching the memory figures. No questions, no puzzles, only presence. Before they left the grove, the tree's runes glowed once more, and the same whisper filled the air, "Come back when you forget." Back at Hogwarts, the morning crept softly over the grounds, brushing the castle with warmth. No one noticed the three friends returning through the forest path. They didn't need to tell anyone. The story, like the vault and the grove, was not meant for loud retelling, but for quiet understanding. They had not uncovered danger or treasure or prophecy. They had been given something deeper, a truth that rested softly in the quiet corners of the magical world. That memory is not just remembering the past, but nurturing it, letting it bloom. As another calm evening settled over the turrets and towers of Hogwarts, the castle's long shadows stretched gently across the grounds like sleepy arms reaching for a final embrace of twilight. In the Gryffindor common room, the fire murmured quietly in the hearth, casting flickers of gold onto the walls. A soft rustling of parchment and the occasional turning of a page were the only sounds, apart from the distant hoot of an owl beyond the window. Harry sat beside the fire, quietly rereading the notes they had scribbled after their visit to the Grove of Remembering. Each word held meaning now, not as clues to solve, but as threads that wove into something larger. Hermione had transcribed the rune from the base of the stone bench, and while its full meaning still eluded them, its gentle message had anchored itself in their thoughts. Those who remember may plant. Those who listen may grow. Ron reclined with his arms behind his head on the sofa, eyes half closed, but mind still turning over their recent experiences. "We're part of something ancient," he said quietly, his voice barely above the fire's sigh. "Something that doesn't want to be understood in a hurry." Hermione nodded from her spot on the floor, books opened around her like petals. "It's teaching us in steps." Slowly, like the forest itself, Harry looked at them both. Then the next step, maybe we choose it. And so, the next evening, they did not wait for another magical twist to nudge them forward. Instead, they returned, deliberately, respectfully, to the forest, the memory vault, and the quiet grove beyond. This time, they brought nothing but their intentions. As they passed through the hidden veil into the grove of remembering again, the space welcomed them with a soft breeze scented with wild herbs and moon-blessed dew. The memory figures still moved in quiet patterns, their silent thoughts brushing gently against the trio as they walked among them. But this time, the trio didn't sit. They separated gently, as if drawn by some inner calling to explore the grove alone. Ron wandered toward a patch of low, glowing mushrooms at the grove's edge. They pulsed faintly, like breathing. As he knelt, he noticed they formed a slow spiral on the ground, like a coiled memory unwinding. He reached out tentatively and placed his palm flat on the center. Instantly, a warmth bloomed in his chest, not sharp, not overwhelming. A memory that wasn't his whispered into his mind, a boy years ago, laughing nervously as he prepared for his first magical duel, not with fear, but determination to protect a friend. The lesson wasn't about bravery, but gentle courage. Ron smiled softly. "That's enough," he murmured, standing with quiet understanding. Far across the clearing, Hermione found a small pedestal carved from root and stone. Upon it lay a ring, not a trinket, but a loop of aged vine frozen in time, humming with preservation. As she picked it up, the world around her slowed. Her breath, her heartbeat, the distant breeze, all stilled into a silence that wasn't empty, but full. In her mind, she saw a young witch reading in the old Hogwarts library, hiding behind stacks of books, worried she would never be as clever as the others. Rowena Ravenclaw approached, not with advice, but with a second book, and sat beside her, reading in silence. "The ring is not a circle of perfection," Hermione heard in her mind, "but of return." She slipped it into her satchel, not to keep, but to honor, a reminder that learning often comes not in triumph, but in returning to one's beginning with new eyes. Harry, meanwhile, had followed a faint path through the trees. It was barely visible, marked only by subtle changes in the way the grass bent or the way the air tasted cooler. It led him to a quiet alcove within the grove, where an ancient tapestry hung between two trees, the fabric softly glowing with runes that shimmered like constellations. As he approached, he saw images form across the weave, not static pictures, but moments in motion. A first year placing the sorting hat on his head, a friend laughing by the lake, a room of requirement opening its door. Then something else, an older Harry, calm and weathered, walking the halls of Hogwarts in silence, not as a student, but as someone watching over it. He didn't speak, he didn't move, he simply watched, and from the tapestry, a message drifted into Harry's heart like a feather landing. The vault remembers those who choose to belong, not by name, but by care. Harry bowed gently, understanding that not all destinies shout. Some whisper. Eventually, the trio found each other again at the base of the memory tree. No one spoke right away. There was no need to. Their eyes told stories. Each had seen something different. Each had made a choice, not of action, but of listening. Hermione broke the silence gently. "I think we were being asked." "Asked what?" Ron murmured, not unkindly. "To accept that we are part of this now," she said. "Not because we uncovered it, but because we didn't rush it. Because we listened." They sat beneath the tree's boughs as night fully settled around them. The stars turned slowly overhead, and the forest curled around the grove like a blanket drawn over tired shoulders. For the first time, the memory tree rustled, not from wind, but from within. A branch bent low and dropped something at their feet. It was a small scroll tied with a silver thread. When opened, it revealed a single phrase: "When the time is right, return to the vault, not to uncover, but to offer." And they understood magic wasn't just meant to be found, it was meant to be shared, and the vault below the forest was not just a place of keeping, it was a place of giving too. The days after their last journey to the Grove of Remembering passed like peaceful whispers through the corridors of Hogwarts. The castle, in its ever-watchful wisdom, seemed to sense the shift in Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Even the staircases creaked a little more softly when they moved through them, and portraits along the walls offered subtle, knowing glances as if they too had heard a part of the forest's tale. The trio had not spoken much about what they had each seen. There was no need for loud conversation, no rush to explain or dissect. Some truths sink in, not like heavy stones, but like quiet moonlight, slowly, fully, and with gentle clarity. Still, the silver thread of the parchment's final message lingered in all their minds. When the time is right, return to the vault, not to uncover, but to offer. And so it was, on a particularly hushed Saturday evening, that the right time arrived, not with drama, but with stillness. A soft fog had descended over the lake, curling up toward the forest like a silent invitation. The trio, without even needing to speak it aloud, knew they would return once more. As they stepped beneath the trees, the forbidden forest welcomed them, not as strangers, but as something more tender, guests, perhaps. The usual eerie rustlings had quieted, replaced by the distant, rhythmic sigh of lapis bulbs shifting in calm slumber. Even the occasional magical creature they passed, like a silvery, long-limbed thestral or a low-eyed centaur, seemed to simply watch and nod, as though they understood the purpose of this walk. When they arrived at the hidden entry once again, Harry placed a hand on the moss-covered stone, and the path beneath the earth gently parted with a breath-like hum. This time, The vault chamber felt different. The room was lit softly from within, not by their lanterns, but by the vault itself. Soft golden filaments of light pulsed gently through the ceiling like slow-moving stars behind thin clouds. The runes on the walls shimmered faintly with recognition. At the center, where once the floor had been bare stone, a basin had risen. It was carved of smooth onyx and filled not with water, but with a gently swirling silver mist that moved with the rhythm of quiet breath. They stood silently before it. Hermione stepped forward first, pulling from her satchel the loop of vine she had taken from the grove. She held it in her palms for a moment, the texture of the ancient wood soft under her fingers, before gently placing it into the mist. The moment it touched the surface, the mist brightened, and a soft tone, like a single note of chime, echoed through the vault. The days after their last journey to the Grove of Remembering passed like peaceful whispers through the corridors of Hogwarts. The castle, in its ever-watchful wisdom, seemed to sense the shift in Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Even the staircases creaked a little more softly when they moved through them, and portraits along the walls offered subtle, knowing glances as if they too had heard a part of the forest's tale. The trio had not spoken much about what they had each seen. There was no need for loud conversation, no rush to explain or dissect. Some truths sink in, not like heavy stones, but like quiet moonlight, slowly, fully, and with gentle clarity. Still, the silver thread of the parchment's final message lingered in all their minds. When the time is right, return to the vault, not to uncover, but to offer. And so it was, on a particularly hushed Saturday evening, that the right time arrived, not with drama, but with stillness. A soft fog had descended over the lake, curling up toward the forest like a silent invitation. The trio, without even needing to speak it aloud, knew they would return once more. As they stepped beneath the trees, the forbidden forest welcomed them not as strangers, but as something more tender, guests, perhaps. The usual eerie rustlings had quieted, replaced by the distant, rhythmic sigh of lapis bulbs shifting in calm slumber. Even the occasional magical creature they passed, like a silvery, long-limbed thestral or a low-eyed centaur, seemed to simply watch and nod, as though they understood the purpose of this walk. When they arrived at the hidden entry once again, Harry placed a hand on the moss-covered stone, and the path beneath the earth gently parted with a breath-like hum. This time, the vault chamber felt different. The room was lit softly from within, not by their lanterns, but by the vault itself. Soft golden filaments of light pulsed gently through the ceiling like slow-moving stars behind thin clouds. The runes on the walls shimmered faintly with recognition. At the center, where once the floor had been bare stone, a basin had risen. It was carved of smooth onyx and filled not with water, but with a gently swirling silver mist that moved with the rhythm of quiet breath. They stood silently before it. Hermione stepped forward first, pulling from her satchel the loop of vine she had taken from the grove. She held it in her palms for a moment, the texture of the ancient wood soft under her fingers, before gently placing it into the mist. The moment it touched the surface, The mist brightened, and a soft tone, like a single note of chime, echoed through the vault. The walk back from the vault was not one of haste or excitement, but of soft silence, filled only with the hush of their footsteps against the pine-blanketed forest floor. The air had changed, or perhaps it was the way they breathed it now, deeper, slower, like each inhalation was part of something greater, something remembered. A faint mist coiled around the trees, catching the silver moonlight in gentle loops, as though the forest itself was exhaling in time with them. There were no howls, no whispers, no movements between the trees, only stillness. A peaceful stillness that held no danger, only acceptance. Ron glanced sideways at Harry and Hermione, his usual light-hearted sarcasm softened into a rare, thoughtful calm. "You know," he said, his voice quiet enough to not disturb the forest, "this whole vault thing, it wasn't what I expected." Hermione looked over, a small smile on her lips. "Me neither. I kept waiting for some ancient guardian to test us. But it was never about that." Harry simply nodded. He hadn't said much since they'd left the vault, not because there wasn't anything to say, but because some things didn't need to be spoken out loud. The feeling in his chest, a warmth that wasn't quite memory and wasn't quite magic, lingered with every step. As they emerged from the forest, the first soft rays of morning light were beginning to brush the horizon. The castle, distant but familiar, stood like a quiet sentinel watching over the edge of the trees. Its high towers caught the dawn in faded gold, and for a moment it felt like time itself had slowed to take in the view. They paused. There was no need to rush back inside. The chill of the morning was gentle, like a reminder of the world continuing as it always had. And yet, something had changed. Harry felt it most deeply, not a shift in the world, but in himself. A quiet turning inward, as though something that had been waiting patiently all along had finally found its way into the light. "I think," he said slowly, "that vault wasn't meant to protect anything dangerous." Hermione turned to him. "No," she agreed. "It was meant to protect kindness, memory, magic that doesn't make noise." They stood there for a few more minutes, their breath misting in the air, letting the quiet settle over them one final time. By the time they re-entered Hogwarts, the castle was just beginning to stir. A few sleepy portraits opened one eye to watch them pass. The fat lady didn't even ask for the password. She simply yawned and swung open, as if she too understood the need for peace. Back in the Gryffindor common room, the fire had burned low, but was still glowing, embers pulsing softly like the heartbeat of the room itself. Crookshanks lay curled on a cushion, only lifting his head slightly before deciding they were no threat to his nap. No words were exchanged. They each found a seat near the hearth, blankets pulled up, legs tucked under. Outside, the first birds began to sing, but even their songs were gentle, as if the world knew not to wake them too loudly. Hermione's eyes began to drift closed, her hand resting on an old book she hadn't opened. Ron leaned back into the sofa, his breathing already slow and steady. Harry watched the fire for a moment longer, then let his eyes fall shut. His final thought, a soft echo from the vault. Not all magic is meant to be remembered in spells. Some is meant to be felt in quiet moments, in kind choices, and in hearts that carry it forward. The castle had long since settled into its nightly rhythm once more. Somewhere above, the enchanted ceiling of the great hall mirrored a sky now shifting from lavender twilight into a dusky, star-flecked blue. The warmth of the Gryffindor common room still lingered, like an old friend's embrace. In that deep hush between waking and sleep, something quiet and magical remained, not in the form of spells or ancient artifacts, but in the feeling. A feeling that perhaps, just for a moment, the forest had whispered something to those willing to listen. And Harry, Ron, and Hermione had listened well. Tonight, the vault had not tested their strength, nor challenged their cleverness. It had offered them something far more rare, an invitation to remember what truly matters, kindness, courage, and the quiet bonds that shape who we are when no one is watching. And now, as you rest here with us at the edge of this magical tale, allow yourself to feel the same warmth that glowed from the forgotten vault. Let it settle gently in your chest, a soft reminder that even in the stillness, magic is never far away. It's in the hush of the trees, in the golden glow of candlelight, and in the peace of a heart that knows it is safe. You are safe here. The story has gently come to rest, just as the characters have, and whatever dreams may visit you now, may they carry a trace of enchanted forest mist, a flicker of wand light under ancient roots, and the soft comfort of a castle that watches over all who walk its halls. So let your thoughts drift like feathers on a breeze. Let your breath slow, deep, and even. Let your eyes grow heavier with each passing moment, wrapped in the quiet that follows a gentle tale well told. You've walked with Harry and his friends through mystery and memory. You've glimpsed forgotten magic, not through spectacle, but through wonder. And now, the story has laid its final stone, tucked softly into the forest floor. Good night, dear dreamer. May your night be calm, and your dreams be gently magical.